Mr. Bass and the pledge by Mr. Vandenberg. Mr. Downing, do you have any
President Smith, yes ma'am. We have several tonight. Green Acres Principal Arthur James and his family lost his father on March 21st. Please keep that family in prayer. He was 89 years of age. And he died working out in his yard. They've been blessed. He was independent his entire life. So please lift that family up. Apollo kindergarten teacher Kathy Ivy went to be with her Savior this past weekend. She left behind her husband Joseph and daughter Elizabeth Grace, who's a 10-year-old. She was a teacher at Apollo for 14 years, at Bossier Parish at Waller and Apollo. She was an incredible lady, an incredible teacher. Just a very courageous battle with cancer. So continue to lift that family up. Our retirement specialist, Mary Denman, continues to go through cancer treatment. Benton High School student Emily Sinagra is at St. Jude's being treated for leukemia. Parker Mills, the son of our insurance secretary Angela Mills, is at MD Anderson after a diagnosis of thyroid cancer. He will be undergoing surgery to remove part of his thyroid. And then, as always, all of those that have been directly and indirectly affected by COVID.
Please bow your head. Father God, thank you so much for the many blessings that you've given us, Lord. Lord, thank you so much this week as we celebrate Easter and the death and resurrection of your Son who died on the cross for our sins, Lord. We're just so thankful. Lord, I just ask that you look over our meeting tonight, Lord. I ask that you look over Principal James and his family and his dad's passing. Lord, I just ask that you look over the Ivy family, Joseph and Elizabeth Grace, Lord, and I just ask that you give Kathy the greatest hug. Lord, I just know that she's there by your side as we're speaking. Lord, I want to pray for Mary Denman and her battle with cancer, Lord. I just ask that you look over her and give her doctors the answer to provide her body with the healing it needs. The Sinagra's family and Emily and her battle with cancer, Lord, I just pray that you give those doctors answers. Lord, I just pray for healing for her. Lord, I want to pray for Parker Mills, Lord, as he's had a diagnosis of cancer also. I pray that you look over him, give him comfort and his doctor's answers also. Lord, I just ask that you continue to look over those families that have been affected by COVID and those patients that have it. And Lord, I just ask that as we start this meeting that we keep you first and your will be done. And I ask all these things in your dear and precious name. Amen. Amen.
Please face the flag and pledge.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Item 1.02, approval of the minutes of the regular session of the board for March the 11th.
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Wiggins and second by Mr. Bass. Please vote. Motion passes. Item 1.03, approval of the agenda for the regular session of the board for April 1st, 21.
Second.
Motion by Ms. Brotherton, second by Mr. Vandenberg. Please vote. Motion passes. There are no recognitions tonight. Item 3.01, request approval of one-time supplement check guidelines presented by Nisha Vandenberg, Chief Financial Officer. Ms. Vandenberg, before you speak, we have a couple who would like to address the board, please. We have, first of all, Ms. Jackie Lansdale.
Good evening. I'm Jackie Lansdale. I'm president of the Red River United, 1726 Line Avenue, Shreveport, Louisiana. I represent teachers and school employees in Caddo, Bossier, Red River parishes. Now, I've been doing this job for 25 years, and I've learned to look for the small print, what's around the corner, the pig and the poke. And you know what the pig and the poke is? That's in the Middle Ages, whenever a farmer would come and wanted to sell something, but he was less than honest, and he would put a cat in a bag and sell it as if it would be a pig. And the person would buy it unsuspecting that they were being duped. So that's what a pig in the poke is. But tonight I didn't see a pig in the poke. What I saw was what you meant. And it was very plain written out, for classified, for certified, for everybody that's on any type of labor. That was very refreshing. I will say that we certainly wish that pig would have been fatter, and we look forward to seeing this district fatten one up. And I will say that we wish that the portions would have been equal, because quite frankly, support employees have been, if you're talking about COVID, they've been exposed just like their certified cohorts. They have been through the rigors just like those certified. And sometimes we just do things because we do things, because we've always done things, and that doesn't always make it right. But I do want to put it on your hearts to look to see that we equal that out. And I want to thank you for the fact that you look for everybody, those that were on maternity leave, those who were on any type of approved leave, extended sick leave, whether it be an accident, whether it be heart surgery or anything else that could happen, that you didn't leave your employees out. And that's huge. That's a huge morale booster. So no pig in the poke here, and I just want to let you know that not looking at a horse's mouth, but we'll talk about that the next time. Thank you so much.
Second, we have Ms. Shawn George.
Get my glasses on. Good evening, Superintendent Downey and Bossier Parish School Board members. Thank you for allowing me to take this time to speak this evening. My name is Shawn Gard, and I have been a special education preschool teacher in Bossier Parish for over 17 years. Prior to becoming a teacher, I served as a paraprofessional in Caddo Parish, so I know firsthand the hard work of our support employees. So I rise to speak on behalf of these important colleagues who we see as our equals. The support staff in our schools have worked alongside us each and every day. They have sanitized classrooms and school buses. They have provided nutritious meals, which for many of our students are the only meals they receive each day. They are the first faces people see when entering our schools. They have changed diapers, provided instructional support for students, all while risking their own health as well. They, like teachers, have gone above and beyond this school year. They, like teachers, are hard-working employees and should be treated as such. I implore you to please consider an equal amount for all employees, regardless of their classification. Thank you again for the opportunity to speak, and thank you for acknowledging our dedication, flexibility, and hard work through these extraordinary times.
Sandberg.
Good evening, Superintendent Downey, President Smith, and the board. Tonight, we are asking and requesting that the board approve the one-time supplement guidelines. We have provided those guidelines for your review. Currently, the proposed supplement is $1,200 for professional staff, $700 for support staff. It would be to all full-time employees who are actually active on payroll as of today, April 1st. And one other change from supplements that we've paid in the past is that this would be direct deposit, it would not be a paper check. So I did want to point out a change there as we continue to move to a direct deposit process. As y'all know, we started discussing this supplement even last year. We started looking at the potential of paying the supplement. We did start the discussions in August, and in November we did put it into our budget so that we would be able to pay it. So we have been discussing this for several months. I also want to remind y'all that this is not COVID related, that this is something that we're paying. It's a supplement that we've been trying to do to push out to our staff to help support them and recognize the hard work that they did do. And I also know that there's been some questions about the funding source, and so as we've discussed in the past and as we did put in the budget, this will be coming from general funds. This will not be coming from a special revenue source. So, any questions from the board? One other thing that came up was the if we've paid this amount in the past, and we have paid this breakout of the supplement, which is where this recommendation came from. It was paid in December of 2017 and December of 2018. As y'all know, in 2019 we rolled it into the salary schedule. Actually more than the supplement actually was. We rolled into the salary schedule, and so that's what we're recommending tonight.
Mr. Brown?
Ms. Vandenberg, would it be accurate to say that we are still researching the authorized use of COVID funds, CARES Act funds, ESSER money, and we're awaiting clarity on exactly what those can be used for?
Absolutely.
I know there is a lot of information out there, misinformation about what some other districts may or may not be doing, and I agree with everything that Ms. Lansdale and the teacher said. That is exactly accurate in terms of what the efforts that everyone has had to make to keep our schools open. So I want to make sure we understand this. There's a difference between what we're doing here and anything that would be COVID related, as we continue to try to research and get answers about exactly what that money can be used for. And I know I've spoke to a couple of you previously about what our efforts have included, and we continue to try to get answers to questions, just like all the other districts in the state are scrambling to try to get answers with clarity, so that we don't do something that we're going to end up getting dinged for at a later date. So, I mean,
That is absolutely correct. To go over, and I won't get too deep into it, I know it's not on the agenda, but the CARES Act money, the COVID money, there's a lot of different names for it. There's actually 3 rounds of it. 1 round was received last year. That actually was used to help pay the salaries for the employees during the COVID shutdown. The salaries that we had to continue for the long-term subs, different ones that we were required to continue payment for. So we have used some of that money to help cover those salaries when we were shut down and they were not working. That money was also used to help with PPE and with sanitation and with some educational projects for virtual learning and things like that. So that was what the first round of money was used for, and we're finishing out that round now. The second round of money, we're still just now building out the budget for, and that's primarily going to be focused on lost learning first and foremost. That's the priority, is to recapture that learning, and we'll continue to look from there to see what we can spend it on. And the third round of money, that's not quite available yet. So and the problem with some of this, we've seen money drop like this before, not these amounts, but we have seen money drop like this before. The problem is the funding comes out before the guidance comes out. And so you're kind of paying backtrack to figure out what's allowable and what's not. There's some things that are very clearly allowable and that you can pay. There's some things that the federal might allow, but our state law would prohibit. And so we have to make sure that we've balanced and looked through all of that before we spend that money and commit that money for certain purposes. So we're just trying to be careful. And like I said, the third round, we're still waiting on that to even drop before we can start spending it. So I hope that helps clear up some of the COVID pay money, or the COVID money.
Board members have questions. Ms. Darby?
No question, just comment. I just wanted to get what was said earlier, that I too agree that support staff along with professional staff should receive. But I am glad that we're looking into it, and I just want them to know that we do see them, and we know the hard work that they're doing, as well as we are.
Thank you, Ms. Darby. All right, so for, Ms. Mill, but
lunch and everything, no extra pay or anything, so they deserve a lot more than they're getting.
Okay. Okay, on that, do we have a motion?
I've talked to several people also, and I have never seen anybody say that they didn't deserve more. We're just trying to come up with it and not have to pay it back later. So I agree with you. But everybody deserves more. And maybe one of these days we'll have that money. We can't go there.
I make a motion that we pass the supplement.
Okay, we got a motion, do we have a second? Second, Mr. Member. Oh, yes, ma'am.
Please take the microphone, if you don't mind. So,
Yes, my name is Sharonda Francis Peter. I'm currently a custodial worker at Howard Middle School. And I wanted to motion on that as well. I'm glad I got a little clarity that this may not be for the COVID, but I do want to voice my opinion on it should, whenever the money is distributed out amongst the employees, that the workers, other workers besides the teachers, are allowed to get the same pay. I mean, for myself and the other custodians, we've been back in school since May, trying to prepare the classrooms with moving desks and taking them out and putting them back in, and the sanitizing, and we do lunch outside, but we have 200 and something buckets that we put out every day that has to be sanitized every lunch shift, then put back in, plus take out trash. We also are understaffed, as well as we have to do stairwell duties, to make sure bathroom duties, to make sure the kids are behaving properly. I mean, we're running on top of all of our other duties that we do have to do. We don't complain, we come to work and we do what we have to do, but we're just asking that when you are considering the funds being distributed, that it's not the lack of your having a college education, is not giving it on whether your life is important or not. That's all I want to say. Thank you.
And I'll second what the board believes. I mean, it's not that we feel like anyone is more important than another when we establish this plan for this stipend. But we appreciate what you do on every day, and I think this whole board realizes that everyone has had to step up to the plate, and we will take that into consideration if we're allowed to use any of that money to do that at one point. Thank you. Okay, so we have a motion and we have a second. Please vote. Motion passes. Thank you. 3.02, update strong school system pilot presented by Superintendent County.
Thank you, President Smith. This is just an update on a pilot program from the Louisiana Department of Education that Bossier Parish was selected for, along with 7 other parishes: Assumption, Caldwell, DeSoto, Lincoln, Tangipahoa, Vernon, and First Line School, Charter School. I believe it's located in New Orleans. Darn football, I'm not sure. This is just an update on what we're involved in. It's a 3-year pilot that is aimed to strengthen school systems and board members in their capacity for strategic planning, implementation, and progress monitoring through cohort-based professional development, technical assistance, and I won't go into great detail, but there's no cost to the district. The goal is to increase equitable access and opportunities to all students from birth to 12th grade, improve outcomes for all students, and be able to sustain these improvements over time. And we're currently in the middle of strategic planning. The members of the team from Bossier Parish are myself, Ms. Tammy Smith, our board president, Dr. Bourgeois, who is the project manager, Director Lillian Holly, Mr. Bates, our secondary supervisor, Ms. Kimmy Smith, our K-2 supervisor, Ms. Andrea Spinney, the principal at Halton Elementary School, and Dr. Kyle Mason, the principal at Benton Middle School. It's an in-depth program. It is a very rigorous, somewhat time-consuming effort to create a strategic plan template that can be followed by the rest of the state. It is a tremendous honor for Bossier Parish to be included in this cohort, and we continue to work through the objectives as we are involved in stakeholder surveys that are now being collected, individual interviews that are going on with our technical partner, which is ANET, and we continue to eagerly await the outcome of that feedback so we can respond accordingly. And I have Dr. Bourgeois and several team members are here. Ms. Spinney has also been identified as an aspiring leader in Bossier Parish, which has qualified her for the Superintendent's Academy, which she is currently filling out the paperwork. So we always want to recognize those people that do an outstanding job, that are in the trenches day in and day out, and she is definitely one of our shining stars. So does anybody have a question about any of the things that may be involved in the pilot program? I know Ms. Smith was on a 4-hour Zoom call yesterday, and I know she enjoyed that thoroughly. That's my reference to the rigor and somewhat time consuming, but we all feel like that the benefit is going to be returned tenfold because we are one of the leaders in the state, and it's because of the people that we have amongst us. Does anybody have a question?
Mr. Downey, what's involved in this? What we're doing?
Doc, you want to give a brief overview because you're very much more attuned to all of the guidelines than I am.
Thank you.
Can you repeat your question?
What are we going to be doing? What kinds of things will we be doing to implement this program?
Well, right now we're in the beginning stages of developing a strategic plan, and we're going through the process of identifying stakeholders. We've identified or asked the board to identify a parent or a person from your district. We've also asked high school principals to identify a parent as well as 2 students from their high school that could serve on a focus group. Those focus group interviews started, I guess, Monday. And we've got district leaders as part of the focus group. We've got principals, assistant principals, part of another focus group. We've got, I believe, the board members. And we've got parents, we've got students, a part of a separate focus group. And ANET, also known as Achievement Network, is our technical assistance partner that we have worked with for the last 4 years. So we have a very good working relationship already. And we were just very lucky that we were paired with them in this project. So once we gather the survey data that I kept sending you emails and everybody in the district emails to complete, it was a real short survey, they're going to use a diagnostic in order to extract some reoccurring themes that will address our strengths and also maybe some gaps that we need to fill. And based on all the focus interviews, document analysis, artifacts, oh my gosh, we had a ton of artifacts we had to submit to include classroom observations from the elementary, ELA and math, middle school, ELA and math, as well as high school. And these were videotaped observations. We also had to submit walkthrough observations, lesson plans, teacher lesson plans, oh gosh, and just a whole bunch of stuff. It took a full team to get that stuff together. And so, yes sir?
Can I interrupt for 1 second? I think it's similar to the external evaluation that we had a few years ago. It's an opportunity for us to initiate this ourselves and bring in outside people to help us survey stakeholders and get feedback and input so that we can respond to that information and adjust accordingly so that we can increase the confidence that everyone feels like they are being heard and their needs are being provided for. It's just a hard look at yourself with brutal honesty to make sure that you are as equitable as you strive to be. And I just wanted to add that. And you may want to piggyback off of that. The group that we used to partner with, that we ended that partnership, and basically we're doing the same thing ourselves in this pilot, and you can add whatever you like.
Yeah, I think that's important that you added that, Mr. Downey. We, in the past, have partnered with Advanced Ed and accreditation for the whole district. We learned that based on the fact that we have school site numbers, that we're automatically accredited. And so this appears to be very similar to that accreditation process, but it's internal, not external. And it was very specific. We had to have a board member or the board support this effort. That's one reason why we're bringing it to you tonight. The superintendent, Downey, he supports it 100% because the benefits are huge. And it's all in the name of improving and elevating students' levels of achievement. And it will also be used as a basis, this committee, of looking at where we need to financially place some of our monies in order to address unfinished learning for our students and other initiatives that will surface as we continue through this process. So we haven't set any goals yet because we're waiting for the results of all the surveys and focus groups.
Sounds great.
Any other questions?
I don't have a question. I was just going to say a comment. It is quite intense. I think that's our second 4-hour Zoom conference in the last month. But I appreciate each of y'all and your support and the time that it's taken to commit to this, because I'm completely overwhelmed and lost half the time during it. But anyway, but I'm glad that we're in y'all's trusted hands to lead us in this, and appreciate each of you.
Well, I would just like to add that the people that I named that are on the committee, they have an opportunity to respond to comments and give their perspective to people from all over the state. And I think that the thing that strikes me as one of the greatest benefits of this is that other people throughout the state get to see how creative and dynamic the people that work here are. I'm not talking about myself, I promise you. But Dr. Mason and Mr. Bates and Ms. Smith, Ms. Kimmy Smith, they are all actively engaged. They have incredible things to say and add to the conversation. And I think it's just a great opportunity for Bossier Parish to be highlighted throughout the state with the LDOE. And I don't think we would have a better opportunity than we have right now for everybody to see the good work that's going on here, and us be willing to really take a hard look at ourselves and make sure that we're everything that we aspire to be.
So my only question is there shining stars? We're looking at replicating that not only throughout our district, but since it's a pilot, then replicating it throughout our state. So we get to make, we're the tip of the spear in this. That accurate?
Or the guinea pig. No, I think that's accurate. I think it will be used as a template for other districts to follow. And of course, when you're the first one, you figure out what the problems are. So we're enjoying that part of the process as well. And I do think it's important that anytime anybody does any kind of self-evaluation, that they're willing to be brutally honest and not get their feelings hurt. And the goal is to correct whatever deficit that you identify not try to excuse it away. And I think that everybody on that committee ends up, has the same desired outcome, and that's just to get better and do a better job for students.
Thank you. Okay. 3.03, update 2020 Hailstorm Claim Report, presented by Clarence Babineau, SGB Architects Program Manager.
Good evening, everyone. Here we go, first slide, thank you. Just a brief report, it's only 3 slides, over what's been transpired in the past couple of weeks since we came on board as program manager for the storm damage repair. So without giving a little background, the overall project is 22 roofs repairs from the date of loss of 4/24/20, so just under 12 months ago. The cost of those projects range from as little as $2,000 to slightly over $1 million. Of those 22, 8 are being handled directly by maintenance. 2 of those are already completed. Those are projects, fairly small projects, from $2,000 up to under $100,000. 10 of those projects, 10 largest, which are above $4 million and require bidding, all have architects assigned to them. Mr. Norwood hired 4 additional architects the same day he hired us. Those projects are in process. Those 10 projects represent 89% of the total repair estimate. One of those is already bid. The new architect was already working on 4 of those. So one bid last week was in budget. He has 3 more out for bid. One bid's next week, and the last 2 bids in 2 weeks. We'll know pretty good how the numbers are going. And the last 6 bid dates are to be determined based on the prudency of time and cost. I say that because the idea is you want to put these out in a strategic way to maintain quality and not bunch up too much work at one time and affect your cost. And the last 4 are all below $250,000 that can be quoted as opposed to being bid. We do have architects assigned to those, and those represent about 8% of the total repair estimate. Any questions? All right. Thank you. Our process. The goal is for us to be complete by April of next year. That will be 2 years from the date of loss. We've been in discussions about a time extension. That's come about because there's been concern about putting so much work out at one time. I've had a conversation with your adjuster about that. It would take a formal request. It's fairly easy to do as far as the letter goes. I can discuss that with Kyle Brothers from Ingle Martin. He indicated that the insurer would look for would want some data to back up the request. That is justification. So we're looking at putting together some the estimates and bid comparison from the 4 projects that are out for bid now. We are working on an overall schedule of all the projects and the timing and the cost to show how we might want to stretch those out to keep the quality up. And then we also want to show them some progress. And I've had a discussion with him. I've even written already about the progress that we've already made, which is essentially the first slide you saw. As I said, we're working on an overall project schedule. We'll be continuing to work on that. It'll take probably a couple weeks to get all the data together to fully put it together. The next big thing we're doing are tests and inspections, and there are 9 schools of the 22 that have been identified that have roof membranes that are being repaired. The reason we're doing that is there's some concern that there may be damage not visible on the top layers, but may be visible on subsequent layers. So we're going to plan on doing that starting Wednesday and Thursday of next week. That's the 7th and 8th. The purpose is if we identify differences with the adjuster's estimate, we'll notify the adjusters and then give them the documentation, and then we'll help with assisting the architects with adjusting the cost of those. And that'll be one of those things that'll take a little bit of conversation. But with that all in hand, then we produce the documents, all the architects produce the documents, and then let them out for bid. So that is a very broad, brief A to Z of the process. All right, any questions? All right, last slide, please. Okay, a little bit about the testing and inspection. Right after my first phone call with Mr. Norwood that Friday afternoon, this was the Friday before he left for spring break, I called a consultant that I've worked with on a number of occasions. His name is Ray Stringers with Armco Industries. They are familiar with Bossier. You may or may not know some of them by name. I've actually done roofing consulting work on several of the new schools, notably Bipstall, Hot Middle, and Benton High. So they're known quantity to us, known quantity to a lot of the applicants who work for you, and they know some of you by name. Stacy's very familiar with the folks. Had Ray come in and have a conversation about how we might proceed with this. And he's suggested there were some tests done by your adjuster back in, I would say, July, August timeframe. I understand those test results have been requested. I didn't get them yesterday. It's about 120 pages. I'm looking through that. But we want to do our own test, just to double check. The real concern is if some roofs have potentially more damage than what is known, then we've got to go to the adjuster right away and say, look, there's really more damage than what you've budgeted for. So let's get that worked out. So rather than get far down the road, you can do it by other methods and be under construction and we found more damage. Then you've got to stop and pause, and it takes longer, causes a lot of problems. It's only roof and the weather's good. Lord knows we've got rain every so often, so we have to be very careful about that. So this is a way to give as much information before we start the process. So we're better armed as we get into the actual construction. So the team and the process will be transparent. We've got one representative architects, a roofer who's going to take the test, a couple of samples, members of our team, and we've invited the adjuster. The adjuster has declined because they're just not able to make it on that short notice. It's about 8-9 day notice from the time we set the notice to the time of the test. They've got a report in hand right now. So we're going to test those 9 schools, and then we'll find out what we can. And when if there's a serious difference, and the adjuster understands there may be some minor differences, they're fine with that. But if there are some notable differences, we'll talk about those, and maybe we'll agree to come back and do some re-inspections in that case. So that's where we are. There's a lot of irons in the fire, a lot of things all happening simultaneously, but that's a good synopsis of what we've done the last 13 days. Any questions?
Mr. President, thank you for helping us fast track this monstrosity of programs to undo in a short period of time.
Thank you for calling. Appreciate it very much.
3.04, request discussion of 2020 reapportionment timelines, criteria, and approval of project proposal for professional services from Geographic Planning and Demographic Services, LLC, presented by Mike Hefner.
Good evening, Madam President, members of the board, Darby up there. Good seeing all of you, Superintendent. It's that time of the decade where any entity that elects their representatives by district has to take a look at what the new population is of their current election districts. With the 2020 census taking place last year, this is normally the year that we start looking at doing reapportionment or adjusting your district so they represent the same number of people. Normally around this time I'd be coming to you telling you which districts were high, which ones were low, and which ones we needed to adjust. But with COVID, delaying some of the collection of the data, as well as the processing of the data, plus a change in administration and some changes in criteria with that, Census Bureau had requested that the reporting of the census be delayed till the end of April of this year, as opposed to the end of December of last year. Congress granted them that extension. I've been in close contact with my folks that I work with at the Census Bureau, because I do a lot of work with them throughout Louisiana for the census geography as we prepare for the census. So I have some contacts there. They're saying that Census Bureau is still trying to make that deadline. Normally, we get our data about 60 days after it's reported to the President, which usually puts us in a late February, early March time frame when we get it. If they do hold to that end of April timeline, then we'll hopefully we'll get the data toward the end of July or the first part of August. But there is, or has been, some discussion, and it's still ongoing, is that Census Bureau, instead of doing a phased release, which means that certain states get their data according to their schedule. We're in the second tier, so we're usually the second set of states to get that data. Instead of doing that, they'll do a release all at one time. The problem with that is if they do that scenario, they won't release the data till the end of September. Now, we're already losing probably 4 to 5 months of planning time that we could be using to develop a new election plan. If they wait till the end of September, then that's going to take even more time off of our available schedule. Now, they're getting a lot of pushback because there's 8 states that are in Tier 1 that by either their state constitution or a state statute, they have to redraw their congressional districts in the fall of the year the census is released, which means it'll be this fall, and wait until September. They're saying, we don't have enough time for this, and we got congressional elections in 22 coming up. So they're pushing back on that. I'm still hoping we go with the August availability of the data. But I am using the time now to get with all my clients to try to get all my things lined up first. Make presentations, let you know that it is a reapportionment year, discuss the timeline, give you the proposal. If that's accepted, to start pre-programming a lot of things so that when the census does drop, I'm ready to program that in and we hit the ground running instead of starting from scratch when that census data is released. So I'm kind of priming the pump as far as getting everything in place. Now, if we get the data in August, then we generally have about 6 months. It'll probably put us October to, we'll go ahead and go back to the timeline. That'll put us, within 6 months, we have to make a determination whether reapportionment is necessary. Normally, my clients usually get that within 30 to 45 days. That'll come to you in the form of a resolution. I'll come give you a short report and a resolution to adopt, which will tell you which ones are high and which ones are low. We know you're going to have to reapportion because to work with your student data and you have a lot of changes in your population. So I know they're going to be out of balance. This will tell you which ones are on the high side, which need to shrink, which ones are on low, they need to expand to get more people, and which ones we may be able to leave alone. But we'll have to work through that. That's part of the planning process. That means that generally from August to June, we'll have for planning. And those of you that went through this process with me last time after the 2010 census know we do this very interactively. A little different than others, the few that do this, I do it different than them. We do it in live sessions. Those of y'all that were involved with our zoning planning for some of your new schools saw how we could move a line and see how it changed on your student counts. Same process, but we move a line and see how it changes on your census count. And so that's what we'll be doing. We're starting with your existing lines and trying to move them as little as possible. We get them balanced. But generally, we're going to have to adopt that by June because we have to give Secretary of State enough time to review it, approve it, and put it in place. Now, it's a little different this time, at this point in time, I should say, than it was when we did yours after 2010. After 2010, like all the previous years, we had to send the plan that was approved by the board to the Department of Justice for them to review that plan under Section 5 of the Voting Rights Act to make sure that the plan didn't violate Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act. In 2013, the Supreme Court found that the formula that dictated which entities had to do that was unconstitutional because they hadn't updated it in years and decades, and that it was unconstitutional. So right now we don't have a Section 5 pre-clearance requirement. We do though still have a requirement to follow Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act. We just don't have to send it to them to go prove that the plan we approved is in compliance with that. If they reinstate that through legislation, Congress reinstates that, then that means our deadline for plan approval moves from June up to January of this coming year. So it's January of 22, not June of 22. So that's why we got to hit the ground running in case they pass there's an act up there right now that hasn't made its way through yet, but if it does, that's going to reinstate the formula for Section 4, which affects Section 5, which ones have to report. So when we get through all that, your qualifying is going to be on starts on July 20th to the 22nd of next year, 2022, and your election is going to be November 8th of 2022. That'll be the first election for your new plan. So we're going to try to get all this stuff done. Now, there's one thing I wanted to discuss with you, because we didn't do this in 2010, but I am encouraging it as much as I can, is that the police jury and the school board both use precincts to build their plans. Think of a plan as a jigsaw puzzle, and the precincts are your pieces of that jigsaw puzzle. How you combine those jigsaw puzzles is what makes the picture of the entire puzzle. You don't have to have the same plan. If you want to, you can, but you don't have to have the same plan. But you do use the same precincts. And in order to encourage both the police jury and the school board to let me work both of their plans so I can coordinate how those precincts are used, I've offered an additional discount to both entities if they do that, because it's real important when you're doing these plans. You're going to end up having to split some of these precincts, because if you put a whole precinct in a district, it's either going to be too much or it's going to be too little. And so you have to divide that precinct. If I know what the jury plan's looking like and the direction they're going, and I know what the board's plan is, what direction it's going, sometimes I can figure out which precinct we should use to split and where to split it, so it helps their plan and it helps your plan with only one split. If you don't do that, if you don't coordinate, what happens is they end up splitting precincts. They don't do me any good working with the board plan. I end up having to split precincts, but it creates what we call lockouts. A lockout is where a voter in a particular precinct, or voters in a particular precinct, some vote for one candidate and some vote for another candidate. Then that is not a separate precinct. So it gets a lot of confusion with the voters. Sometimes it gets confusing for the candidates. They go campaign in a part of the precinct that's really not in their district. So it's a waste of their time and resources. And voters get confused when they go to the poll. And they say, I was expecting to vote for that candidate. He wasn't even on the ballot. And then you start getting the phone calls to the registrar, to the clerk, and so on and so forth. The media. I couldn't vote for the person I want. Usually that's because of a lockout. I want to try to avoid that as much as I can. But also I'm working with the police jury and the board. I'm able to minimize the number of precinct splits, because every precinct that's split with their plan creates a new precinct, because they can only adopt the plan by whole precincts. And every election for every precinct runs you about $3,300 to run that precinct. So it adds money that you're spending on an election that you can use for something else. Whether it's a bond referendum, an election, whatever. If you're having to pay for that election, this helps you save you money, which means taxpayers save money, the state saves money. So I'm kind of a stickler for the precinct, so I wanted to let you know that. The police jury did adopt my proposal back in early February. So if you adopt it as well, then you'll both be getting that additional 10% discount. That brings it, go ahead and put the proposal up if you'd like. And then I'll come back, I'll circle around to the summary. I'm taking it a little out of order. Let's go ahead and go to the proposal while I'm on that. I'm trying to keep the pricing down as close to what we did in 2010 as possible. So it's $28.5 with the additional discount comes out to $25.5 is what the proposal is. And that's a turnkey, doing work with y'all and y'all with me as well. I like to just do a set amount. That way there's no price creep as things go on. So since they approved it, if you approve yours as well, then it'll be $25.5. That's everything. Whether we got to do section 5 or not, that proposal I don't add, if that comes back into play, there's no additional cost. So let's talk a little bit about the criteria. We go back to the summary. Under section 2, there's certain things we got to do. Those that have been through this will know this. Those that haven't yet, you're going to learn it really quick. And I think you're actually going to enjoy going through the process. We got to make sure districts are as compact as possible. They're all contiguous, so all one piece. They're not different parts of the parish. We want to try to keep your small communities together within a single district and not split them between 2 or more districts. We want to try to move your districts as little as possible. That's the preservation of your core districts. Protection of incumbents. Some people say, well, that just protects those of you up there and the ones that are already elected. That's not what it's there for, but it's there to keep the hanky-panky from going on during a reapportionment process to try to knock people out of their district by putting them in with someone else. We have to comply with all aspects for section Rights Act, such as one man, one vote, and we got to use whole precincts or follow state law on precinct splits. We got to use census tabulation blocks, and of course follow the timelines. One thing I do want to recap though is race. That comes up. One of the things that I'll be evaluating when I get the census data is not only your population in each district, but also what the minority voting strength is with the 2020 numbers on the existing districts. And that'll be one of the things that we'll have to watch as we make adjustments in those lines. We have to preserve the minority voting strength. We can't use this as an opportunity to weaken that, water it down, or whatever. So we'll be watching as we work through that. We had a couple of areas that we worked with. Darby and I worked with that together on some things, and looking forward to doing that as well. As far as doing it, we do it as a group. I really see myself as a facilitator. I'll come with a starting plan that meets all Section 2 criteria. But from there, we'll put it up on the screen and we'll start looking at going district by district and seeing if there's any changes that you want. Eventually, we'll come to a plan that has a consensus, and that's when I'll work up the resolution for your plan adoption and the written descriptions that go with it. And that's what we'll submit to the Secretary of State for their approval, or US DOJ if it's for Section 5, if that's reinstated. So that in a nutshell is kind of what the process is. Anybody have any questions on it? I do have the proposal there for you at the whatever the opportune time is. Certainly would love the opportunity to work with y'all again on this.
Thank you, Madam President. I'm excited that the police jury has accepted Mr. Hefner's proposal. This will make it much, much easier. We've gone through this before.
Yes.
And so it will really enhance our ability to expedite our reinforcement. With that in mind, I would like to make a motion that we accept Mr. Hefner's proposal.
I second.
Mr. Wiggins, did you second?
Yes.
Okay, we'll have a second by Mr. Wiggins. Discussion, please vote.
Yeah, same here. What I will do is, if there's any change on the timeline from an August receipt of the data, I'll get in touch with the superintendent to relay it to each of you to let you know what it looks like the new date will be. If it looks like we're on time for that, then the next time I'll be seeing y'all, other than the projection report, is going to be for the determination phase, which will be that little report and the resolution saying which districts are high and which ones are low, and which ones didn't change much. So that'll be next time.
All right, thank you.
Y'all stay safe. Thank you.
Request declaration of surplus presented by Terry Douglas.
Thank you, Madam President. Good evening. Madam President, Mr. Downing, members of the board, per the memo dated March 26th, the last of the items listed within be declared surplus.
So moved.
We have a motion and a second. Please vote. Jennifer, that was Mr. Bamberger and Mr. Bennett. 3.06, request approval of solicitation award 2118 bid opening LED field lighting for Halton High School, presented by Ms. Douglas.
Okay, this project is for the LED field lighting at Halton High. This particular bid is for the softball and baseball field portion. We removed the football field portion after we had our pre-bid meeting, and there were some clarification issues that were raised. So we received, in order to move forward, we just removed the football field and received bids for the other two portions. And that's what is on this tab for $359,950 to Penis. And then Mr. Roger, in an attempt to keep the project for the football field on its initial schedule, was able to work on clarifying second tab that we're showing, I'm going to say, there it is. That is, the football field portion, and the first tab is the baseball, softball field portion.
So the recommendation is for Camus for the retrofit football stadium. That was a quote, and then
Yes,
the
this
first
is a
one.
quote,
Okay.
the other one's gonna require.
Okay, so the other one is also for Camus.
Yes.
Correct. Okay, so do we have a motion? Question?
Is this under what we had allocated or after we had allocated?
Yes, so the total funds available for costs, for construction were $850,000. So together, for both of them, were just over $600,000, maybe $620 between the two. I'm sorry. I was looking at our estimated cost from the architect. Together, they're both just under $600,000, yeah, $600,000.
Thank you.
I do have a quick question while we're on this. I know that we all received information about grants for switching over properties to LED, so are we considering that on all these projects that are coming?
That would be a question for,
I'm sure that's on the athletic field with the LED light.
You're referring to Mr. Foster Campbell's letter you sent out. That paperwork's on my desk. I'm attempting to write a grant for that. I've gotten in touch with Mr. Hobbs, his assistant, and I'm working on a template to try to move that forward. We already have moved forward in the past several years in that direction, directly with AEP rebates to the system. We've completed 2 this year already, so this will get added to that.
I just know one of those are time sensitive, and whoever gets it in first is the one to.
Yes, I never wrote a grant before, this will be my first attempt, so I'm working on that.
We have complete payment.
Tracy, did we get a grant, did you get a rebate on any of this? Are we gonna get a rebate on any of this?
It did not go in, it went so quickly, I was working on classroom LED stuff. I'm not sure, last time I talked to our AEP representative about off-field lighting LEDs, he mentioned back that he didn't think the probability of getting much rebate from them, not the Foster Campbell, that's another option. But he said he didn't see getting much rebate back on it because the usage is lower versus a school class every day type situation, and they wanted to refer us into the schools more.
Thank you, I'm sorry.
Mr. Roder, just an ask. I know that we've had some discussions over poles that lighting is on too, those rebates, if that possibly could be looked at and being poured back into not only the lighting, but the structure that the lighting sits on. I would love to hear some ideas on that too, because I know we've had some discussions on, a lot of those being passed, they're using a lifespan. So as we get into that rebate, I'd like to know if there's any room in that grant for that also.
I don't know the room yet, I'm still trying to figure out how that whole process works.
Well, I just want to make sure we're not only looking at the lighting, but also the structure when we're writing the grant.
Yes, we would have to, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so, yeah, so back to the, halt LED field lighting, we have a recommendation for Campus Electric. Motion.
I'll make the motion.
Motion by Ms. Brotherton, second by Mr. Rockhouse. Please vote. Motion passes. 3.07, request approval of solicitation award 2123, Platte Elementary roof replacement. Also, Ms. Douglas.
This is to replace the roof under the Fund 23 Insurance Fund for Platte Elementary. We took bids on March 23rd. Had a really good turnout, 5 bidders, and due to the cost of the base plus both alternates, plus the alternate one, we're recommending the base and the alternate for a total of $595,700 to Terry's Roofing.
Mr. Wiggins is a Bossier City roofer.
Thank you.
Do we have a motion?
I'm okay.
Okay, motion by Mr. Van Buren, second by Mr. Rockhouse, please vote.
lower than the others, isn't it?
It is, I don't have the percent differences between the five. Each bidder, I do announce on their bid that they have 48 hours to review their bid, and they can pull it if they have known that they've made an error. And when I talked to Terry's Roofing, they were very confident in their bid numbers.
So I think it's wonderful. Wonderful.
Gary, the bid bond is attached to that, to me.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you. 3.08, request approval of solicitation award 2119 HVAC upgrade at Green Acres Middle School. Ms. Douglas.
This project is to replace the HVAC in our Green Acres. We received two bids on this one. The paint company came in the lowest overall for base and both alternates. Came in under the funds available for construction, so we're recommending that they are awarded the base plus both alternates.
Recommendations for the paint company for the bid and the alternates. Do we have a motion? I'll make the motion.
Second.
We have a motion by Ms. Brotherton and a second by, what is your name? Mr. Bullard. Please vote. Don't be beating it. They're on the board. Motion passes. Thank you. 3.09, Scholarship Committee meeting held March the 29th, presented by Ms. Brotherton.
Thank you, President Smith. The Scholarship Committee met here that Monday night. That's March the 29th. All members were present, including President Smith and Mr. Wiggins. The purpose of that meeting was for us to look at the scholarships applications that were turned in. The committee recommends that the Bossier Parish School Board approve the awarding of the following: two $2,000 scholarships, one $1,000 scholarship. Then there will be two $500 scholarships provided by Pat Wortman Memorial Scholarship Fund and one $500 scholarship provided by AJ and Mildred Burns Memorial Scholarship Fund. We had a motion and it was unanimously approved. This is out of committee.
This is out of committee. Please vote. Unanimously approved. 3.11, items for discussion only of the Scholarship Committee meeting. The committee reviewed and scored all applications for the purpose of selecting the scholarship recipients. And 3.12, request of trip request, approval of trip request.
Madam President, these are on order.
Do we have a motion?
Motion approved.
Motion by Mr. Bass,
Second.
second by Mr. Willard. Please vote. Motion passes. Superintendent Young, do we have any announcements, comments?
Yes, ma'am. Schools and centers will be closed April 2nd, tomorrow, and April 5th, Monday for Easter break. The next regular session of the board is scheduled for April 15th at 6 p.m. here at the BIC. That concludes my announcement.
Thank you. And Mr. Slack and Mr. Cheatham are both out of town, so we'll have to have a motion by someone else to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
By Mr. Bullard, second